Hello friends and welcome to my channel. My name is Alechia and today I'm going to go through all of the books that I read in February. I was able to read 7 books during the month of February, which is actually a lot for how I've been reading recently, which is like I haven't been reading that much. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first book, which was Esperanza, Renace. I'm not sure if I'm quite pronouncing that right. In English, it's Esperanza Rising. This is like a middle grade book that the blurb I read said a Mexican middle grade version of Grapes of Wrath. I read this book in Spanish. I've been trying to read in Spanish so I can practice my Spanish, and I've been really focusing on things like YA or middle grade, things that are on the easier side / don't have made up words, especially, or words that are not super common, just because I feel like that's what's best for me and my practice right now. So as for the contents of this book, I liked it. I can't compare it to Grapes of Wrath since I haven't read Grapes of Wrath. I thought it was interesting. It didn't do quite what I expected it to do. There was a twist. I don't know if twist is the right word, but there's a couple things I expected to happen that didn't happen, and that's kind of nice when you don't know exactly what's going to happen. And overall, I liked it. It is middle grade, so I wouldn't say it was anything revolutionary for me as an adult, but I did think it was a really good read. The next book I read was Far from the Light of Heaven by Tade Thompson. This is a sci-fi book. It's basically like a murder mystery in space, and I really liked this book. I listened to the audiobook and I liked the narrator. I didn't have any issues with the audiobook narration. I was really sucked into the story and overall just really enjoyed this book and the twists and turns it takes and the things you think is going to happen and who you think did it, and then it turns out you're wrong, and then all of that good stuff. I really liked this one and would definitely recommend if you are into sci-fi and like space travel books. The next book I read is the first physical book I read, and that is Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jemisin. This was a reread for me. I picked this up and I read it in one night on a night where I wasn't feeling too hot. I was not in a great headspace and I did not have the mental energy to read a chapter book. And I didn't want to sit on my phone and scroll social media because I knew that would just put me into a worse spot. So I had to go with something that would be easy enough to read, that I could actually focus on it, and also was not a screen. I didn't want to be looking at any screens or anything like that. So I picked up Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too. This is a really cute little book that is about an alien who comes to Earth and is trying to learn about humans and like the adventure they go on trying to learn about humans. It is very cute and it definitely made me cry, and I think it made me cry the first time I read it, so keep that in mind. Don't read it if you're in public, maybe, unless you're okay crying in public. But yes, I definitely recommend this one as well. Very cute, very heartwarming. After that, I read Fate of the Fallen by Kade. This was another reread for me. This is a fantasy book about a chosen one, and kind of stereotypical. There's a chosen one and he has to go save the world, but there's some wrenches thrown into that plan. I won't say much more than that. This was good. I didn't like it on my reread as much as I liked it the first time, but I also have realized since my reread, I just don't like fantasy as much as I thought I did. And I was rereading this because I was trying to read the second one, and I have kind of maybe DNF'd the second one just because of some stuff that happens in the second one that I cannot handle. I can't read about that. It's too much for me. I'm not sure if I'll go back to it and just like skip that part. Anyway, that's not this book. This book, like I said, I didn't like it as much on my reread as I liked the first time around, but overall I still thought it was pretty good. And I like conceptually this book a lot because I like a lot of the subversions of tropes that Kade does in this book. The next book I read was Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk, and this book was amazing. This book is so good. It is a novella, it's very short, and it kind of emotionally destroyed me. This is about a woman who sold her soul to save her brother, and she's offered one last job that could give her the chance to actually have a future with the woman she loves. This book, twists and turns everywhere. I really thought I had it figured out. On page 25, I was like, I know how this is going to end. I call it, I know how this is going to end, and I don't care because this book is so good that I don't care if I predict how it's going to end. I'm still going to enjoy the story. Well, boy, was I wrong. I did not know how it was going to end. I still really, really enjoyed the story, but I had no idea. I was completely wrong about how it was going to end. And the ending kind of ripped my heart out and destroyed it in a good way. It made me feel all of these emotions, and it made me feel a lot of emotions, and I was so invested in this story and would definitely recommend. It is kind of paranormal, so if you're into like mystery, paranormal stuff, would highly recommend. Honestly, even if you're not, maybe give it a try. It's short, it doesn't take a lot of time to read, and I think you will like it. The next book I read was The World We Make by N.K. Jemisin. This is book 2 in the Great Cities series, and this series is about New York City becoming embodied in people. I won't go into too much detail about what the second book is about specifically. Overall, I liked this book. I honestly don't know if I liked it as much as the first one. I think I liked the first one a little bit more. Part of that is because in the second one, you're going along, you're enjoying the story, you're invested, and then you look down, at least this is what happened to me, you look down and you realize there's only an hour left in this audiobook, and we have way more than an hour's worth of story left. The end of this book felt so rushed and kind of unprepared and out of nowhere that I was surprised by what was happening. I definitely expected to Google it and find out there was going to be a third book right up until the last hour or so of this audiobook. And that kind of pacing for me just really threw off the end of the story. Still a good book, still would highly recommend, but not quite as good as the first one. And I do think there were some pacing issues. So I ran out of space. I had to free up some space. If the framing is a little bit different, that is why. Now, on to the last book. The last book I read in February was The Sound of Stars by Alechia Dow. This is a book I heard about so many years ago, and it's been on my list forever, and I was like, I'm gonna read it. I've been looking forward to it for forever. It's like a sci-fi dystopian about a world where music and books and all things art is outlawed, but it's YA. I didn't remember that. I also didn't remember it's dystopian, really. I just kind of remembered that music and books were outlawed, and I was like, oh, that's so interesting to me. I want to read that. But it is YA, and I had some issues with it because of the YA-ness of it. Overall, good story. It had some very tropey things. It had some things that were very heavily set up and very heavily expected, and when they came around, I wasn't surprised that this thing was happening because, yeah, you could tell that was happening from halfway through the book, right? It's one of those books that is good, and if you really like YA, I think you will really like it. One of the things I take issue with in this book is, like, as a 30-year-old woman, I sometimes feel kind of weird reading about 17-year-old romances because that is so not my life, and I'm so far removed from that at this point. I just feel a little bit awkward and uncomfortable reading, like, about teenagers kissing and, you know, maybe having sex and all these different things. It's just not for me. YA is not for me. This book really drove home that I need to be way more selective about the YA I'm reading and pretty much cut it out entirely unless I think it's going to be an amazing, outstanding YA book and probably doesn't have that much romance, because like romance to begin with can make me uncomfortable in adult books. So especially when it is teenage romance, I feel weird reading about it. Just me. So, like I was saying, this is a good book that I think you could really like if you like YA books, but it just missed the mark for me. And that's the end of the list. That is everything I read in February, and I'm really happy with making it to 7 books since I don't feel like I've been reading that much recently. If you've read any of these books, let me know what you thought of them in the comments, or just let me know what you read in February down below. I hope to see you in my next video. Thanks for watching. Bye!